Hello. Another episode of Write Once, Read Many. This time covering 27.1 from Arc 27, Extinction. Hey, Greg. Hey, Vic. Glad that you're dancing in the chat. Yeah, so that is the new song Extinction, and that'll probably be our theme for the next 3 arcs, so very cool. And the speed draw is almost over. My favorite part's coming up when the shade on the right side of the screen gets sort of shaded in. Maybe I mistimed it a bit, but just letting it go. Oh, the video isn't working for Greg, just the audio. Huh. Oh my word. Well, we all get to, relive the speed draw while I talk this time. I will do this. Oh, the challenges of computers. Is it showing this time, though? Huzzah. Well, cool. Yeah. Greg says that he enjoyed the speed draw of a black bear eating blackberries at midnight. Well, that was just Taylor flying above the ocean when the moon wasn't out at night. It was just really dark out, so we captured the darkness by having it be pitch black. Well, spoilers also. Near the end of the speed draw, there's a part where there's sort of a shadow on the right side, and it looks really neat when it appears. The audience participation question for this week is, what's another long-term villain reveal in the last 80 to 90% of the story? Something like the Scion reveal in Worm. And I thought we would just maybe get some fun examples. There are, of course, multiple Kirby games where suddenly, like, a cute little thing turns evil or whatever. But, so it goes that Eldritch Abominations can sometimes also be a cute little thing. Let's see here. So for themes, I had like loss of control. Taylor has this whole moment where she even like thinks about feeling like a child and feeling powerless and stuff. And it taking her back to how she felt at the beginning of high school as well. And then I also put keeping track of people as individuals, because Taylor keeps seeing like crowds of like huge numbers of people, and then when she's saving people, she's really able to individualize. And when she's like when she's passing the tent city, she makes sure to like look at specific individual people and remember their faces and such. And then in both the next chapter and in previous chapters to do with like Cauldron, they're always talking about like percentages of people. Oh, there's the shadow flickering into life. Talking about percentages of people who are going to live or die or what have you, and really taking away the sense of people as individuals or as sort of important in their own right, and just really reducing them as about as far as you can, I guess they could not even track them at all, and maybe that would somehow be worse. But you get what I'm saying. So, I'm sure there are many more themes, but those are the ones that I wrote down. At the start of the chapter, we return to Taylor's perspective. Right as they all hear the news about Scion's attack that we witnessed in the interlude, and everyone is devastated. Most of them physically staggering in some way. Because Saint has to focus resources elsewhere, there even an Azazel that was fighting at this like battlefield has to emergency land as the AI stops driving it, which leads to the sort of imagery of even this big robot being tripped up and losing its composure. And I'll talk about most of their individual reactions later in the characters section. There's all the people on Taylor's side who are fighting here. The Brockton Bay wards, the Chevalier, Revel, Tecton, Rachel, Parian, and Foil. So it's like, it's a mixed bag group. The people who are coming in from the extra dimensional portal, and they're all having problems. They even have more Undersiders who are, more Brockton Bay wards who are ferried in mid battle. They have like Clock Blocker and Vista and Toggle and people, but yeah. So Taylor takes out her earbud when she notices Rachel cutting the real dog out of a big dog. And she moves in to help her. after Rachel flinches for a moment, she silently accepts her help. And after they've got the dog, then Taylor and Rachel start moving to board the Dragonfly, which had been on autopilot in their direction, and was going to like circle around till Taylor needed it. But as they're passing Perrin and Foyle, Taylor's like kind of dreading inviting them to join the group, and then Perrin gives a little head shake no, so Taylor's relieved. Vic says, and Perrin and Foyle can't stop smooching, and Taylor's like, why can't that be me? Taylor's like, I wish I had something to stab like Rachel does. So makes up an excuse to help her. Yeah. It's funny because when she says that she puts the bugs in there, my first thought wasn't like, oh, gross. My first thought was like, the bugs should be munching on the stuff to help them cut through. Yeah, she thinks about the Perrin and Foyle thing several times, and like, there's one time later where it can kind of be read as like, oh, maybe she means she wants, like, Gru to be there, because it feels like she's, like, referencing them having a romantic, person to comfort them, and so you could read it however, but it just kind of also keeps feeling like very, I don't know, it comes off as Taylor seeking female companionship. But anyway, so once they're on the Dragonfly, Taylor takes the driver's seat and Rachel wedges herself into the spot on the floor beside her chair. I'm really collapsing a lot here with this summary. They see people fleeing over the whole country and trying to get to the closest portal wherever they are. And traffic has stopped most places, and people have to travel on foot and swim across rivers and so forth. All kinds of, annoying garbage tasks, having to try to figure out what they're going to do. A lot of them only know about the Brockton Bay portal, so they're, like, fleeing the entire breadth of the United States, which is, quite a trek. As they get closer to the East Coast, the land itself is damaged from, like, the major blast that Scion had done, and it earthquaked and wrecked up the place for miles. And I got this quote here. This was one place, one moment's attack. The display in the cockpit was showing more locations hit. Libya, Russia, France, Sweden, Iran, Russia again, China. And so, like, 45 or so minutes have passed. She says since she first checked a clock, but who knows how long that means. People are seeing the scale of the threat, and they've had time for it to set in that even compared to the Endbringers, Scion is, like, much more of a threat, much more powerful and capable than anything they've fought before. He's, like, they say as tough as Behemoth, but frankly a lot more tough than that, and nearly as mobile as Khonsu. I would say he hasn't shown it yet, but he's more mobile than Khonsu, and then, like, has the psychological impact of the Seamerg, and it's like, I'll give you that one. It's probably around the same. But, when they get really close to Brockton Bay, that says, here, describing it, folding and collapsing, the entire city had been shattered. No section of the ground more than 25 feet across remained fully intact. The landscape rose and fell like waves, petrified and left frozen in time. So, kind of messed up Brockton Bay, and this was like a glancing blow from the initial blast that had been, I think, directed further north. Or this was the one where he does the beam cut across the way. But then Taylor notices that the force field that used to be the like anti-missile force field around the Brockton Bay Protectorate had been repurposed since the Protectorate headquarters was destroyed, and it now holds back the water because seemingly the landscape is below ocean level, and so they're trying to, evacuate everyone and get everyone out of the rubble while the force field still holds, and it keeps flickering off for a few moments, and then like huge portions of water will like flood in. But it's holding it back for now. And we used to think that was overkill when they had it on the Protector. So Greg says, the force field being mildly useful once in its miserable life. Yeah. Taylor is able to sense things they approach through the bugs in the ruins, etc. And they land. She thinks to herself, not everyone had made it. Too stupid to think they might. My dad's house was gone, collapsed, nobody inside. Then she thinks through a bunch of other places that are gone. Winslow High, the mall, the library, Fugly Bob's, oh my god. The boat graveyard, my old hideout. Oh my god. And the boardwalk is underwater, even with the force field holding things back. And this is when she thinks, this is when we sort of work through, she's thinking about like the masses of people who are dead, but then also starts thinking about like who the like wounded people would be and how they interwove into the community, and the idea that so many of them are all gone so quickly. And she thinks back to Golem, and how he had sort of put this idea in her head that she needs to, that he needed to, but now she, in her mind, also needs to hold on to the idea of these people as individuals. And at first she thinks like Tattletale hasn't given her info, and then she realized she hasn't been looking at her notifications, so she finally looks at her phone. People tried to message her a whole bunch at first, and then after about a half hour, everyone stopped messaging because they all realized they sort of needed to be somewhere. She doesn't even have time to read her notifications because she just needs to immediately, like, as they arrive there, even before they're landed, she's probably doing it, but she's pointing out to the rescue teams where they need to go. It says, not Fugly Bob's! Yeah. Does not even think of her dad when she finds her home gone. Lamau. Well, I feel like that's, if we want to go back to that, I sort of skated past it, but I was going to talk about it later. I think the whole thing kind of goes together. Not everyone had made it. Stupid to think they might. My dad's house was gone, collapsed, nobody inside. And then she moves. So the fact that his body isn't in there, like, we'll have a long time where she has, like holds two things in her mind. Like, she thinks that Danny is definitely dead, but she refuses to ask anyone and confirm it, even though she thinks that Tattletale definitely knows that the answer is for sure yes. So I think the idea is that she knows that she can't even handle it, and so she just doesn't take the time to directly confront this. But I mean, like, I don't know. I do think it's really intentional the way that it is. It's not it's not as incidental as her being like, oh, I just didn't think of him. Let's see here. So yeah. She begins a bunch of search and rescue work. They're using Rachel's dogs and Taylor, and they just keep moving from site to site. She says that she's putting herself back in the mindset she's been in for the last 2 years, where she says, sublimating what I wanted to do in favor of doing what needed to be done. So time is passing. She's not really able to keep track as they're going, and she's getting worried because Rachel is getting more and more impatient and stuff. And then they save a little girl who's clutched to a dead puppy, and then this gives Rachel the same moment that Taylor has when Taylor thinks about how precious each life is and how what they're doing is meaningful. Then Rachel sees a dog and is like also moved in the same way. And I mean, put in basic terms, what if there are more dog under there? At some points, Taylor thinks of herself as being like, a little cold because she's leaving behind like dead bodies. They're not digging out people who aren't still alive, but there's practicality to be had here. There's still alive people that you have to prioritize, obviously. As they're working, it doesn't say like when they arrive exactly, but Vic says Taylor is like a mess mentally this chapter. Yeah, she totally is. This is like one of the most in shock chapters of the whole book. And so Clockblocker and Vista are there, and I mean, they might have been flown back, but they might have like just used Vista's super ultra speed power to fold space on to huge degrees. It doesn't really matter. They got here, and Taylor wasn't tracking anybody's movements, so they're helping her with this. Vic says she contradicts herself a lot and throws a guy in a tree and is unhappy that he doesn't say thank you. Yeah. But she's not like mad at him like she could be. She's also like excuses it. We'll get there in a second. But yeah, as Clockblocker and Vista help using their powers, which are obviously very good for this kind of work, then Scion flies by in the distance, and a thin beam is directed at the ground below him as he passes, and just the aftershocks that reach them a while later, like it says, the aftershock of his passing took time to reach us, so I assume that it's a few seconds, but then, they rumble, and some of the water becomes like steamized, and like everything resettles, like it causes enough like shaking and so forth that they have to suddenly be in another emergency collapse. And this is when Taylor is up in a building, and she just grabs a guy in his 20s, and she's like, oh, I can't grab him fast enough. And then kind of, as she's escaping out the window with him, he scrapes against the glass. Good fun. And then she also has to drop him like 2 stories into the canopy of a tree, and then that breaks his arm. But she barely keeps herself from slamming into the ground by herself. Oh, we got Vic says he literally got glass sharded through a window. Greg says they should be glad Scion has yet to reveal his ultimate power, Fire Axe. Yeah, true. one of those hidden powers that we can't reveal yet. Um, uh, so yes, the guy has a very bad time. He gets glass scraped and all, but she does take him down from the tree, and apparently at least three more people got completely crunched in the building collapse. So it's one of those like, look, it's not great that you got scraped by glass, but the alternative is that you would be below the building. And then she's like, she's having her moment where she acknowledges to herself that what she's feeling is her loss of control, anxiety, and hopelessness, and she can't think of anything to do. And even though she is actively rescuing people from the way she thinks about the world, she's like, I'm not doing anything, because she is like, rescuing people is one thing, but ending the scenario so that there don't need to be exponentially more people to rescue is much more her thought process and goal, which is understandable. Let's see here. Boop, 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 boop. Yet again, when after she thinks of, she says, of being a child, powerless and unable to act, she thinks to herself, I saw the image of Perian holding foil in my mind's eye, and it was joined by an almost sick feeling, mingled relief and fear. I knew exactly what I wanted, and I was terrified to seek it out. Look, I know that is probably meant to indicate that she wishes to seek out Gru, and she's terrified of the fact that he's not here, or that she wishes to seek out Danny, her father, for relief, and that he is almost certainly dead. So I get that that's what the book is doing, but it also seems like she's like, I need a lady. And you know, Vic is right. This might be the gayest chapter. Oh man, I'm trying not to lay it on too thick, but I just have strong feelings about this. This is like when I'm reading different scenes in some lit fic books, and I'm like, this is pretty gay. She can't stop thinking of Perian and Foyle and Rachel and Lisa, and also body contact. Then back to Taylor saying how she understands the impatience that Rachel had been feeling earlier from her current sort of aimless, anxious state. And this is when she says, I got the guy out of the tree and found him okay, but for a broken arm. He didn't thank me, but I let myself chalk that up to him being in shock. Look, I think, Vic, we need to chalk Taylor's behavior up to her being in shock. We're going forgiveness for forgiveness. Shock for shock. And then it says, I almost stumbled over to the latest I keep almost just reading the text because there's so many good parts. But she's just like so out of it that she was gonna like just wander over to more injured people. Then she's kind of like, no, whoa, wait, there's medics here. I need to keep going doing superpower stuff. And her gloves are like crusted with blood. And she realizes that she sees Rachel gazing at the portal, but she realizes that they kind of are within, not a stone's throw, but maybe a few giant dog leaps of the Undersiders across the portal headquarters, which is Rachel's house that is being reappropriated to be like a whole Undersider base. And she thinks about not having a home, etc. She thinks about how this must be harder on Rachel because they're so close to being where she wants to be and where her dogs are. So then they decide they wordlessly decide. She and Rachel's bond is mostly about wordlessly deciding things. They decide that they need to go through the portal, etc. It's even more like they had been building a big like tower to the portal. Man, I didn't even think about it, but that'd be like a good like Tower of Babel imagery. The tower of like weird debris and planks up to the portal, and they're hanging like rope ladders down from the portal to let as many people through as possible. So people are climbing up, people are building up, and then Rachel uses this as a platform for Bastard to jump through. Not exactly safe or advisable, but this is the chapter where we excuse literally everything for characters all being in shock. And then the people working on the tower, as soon as Bastard is gone, they go back to working on it. Taylor just uses her flight pack to float through. And this is Earth Gimmel. We've been on Earth Bet the whole time, the beta of Earths, and now New Earth just dropped, Earth Gimmel. I don't have any funny cultural stereotypes about Gimmel like I would about Bet, because there's no gamma male memes. I'm sure there are. I'm sure there's, but I'm not that far down the meme rabbit hole, and since I don't actually believe in it, then I don't have the inside scoop from all the rarest male types. We'll say that the stereotype about gammas is they're like, what if a beta could punch really hard? There we go. Those gammas. Just like how a Sigma male is, what if an alpha male was Keanu Reeves? Let's see here. So, when Taylor flies through the portal, we get a description of kind of how it's supposed to be. It says, trains extended in every direction from the portal, on tracks that extended out into the middle of nowhere, into pristine forest and mountains. They were long, almost absurdly long. Then again, the whole idea had been to have instant evacuation. Rather than have people make their way to trains, they'd had 8 trains that simply spanned the length of Brockton Bay, so any given individual had to find the nearest train car and make their way down the aisle to an empty seat. So yeah, that's a great idea, except that the attack was too fast. Had they been attacked like 20 minutes later, they could have shipped as many trains through as possible, but like a split second in, and the whole thing was non-functional. Unfortunate stuff. But they do get to have the infrastructure on the Gimmel side, at the very least. So yeah, they have a town along the sort of outside. Also the station is described as being designed by Escher. Since it extends upward, not necessarily all outways. It has to be like as much portal coverage as possible. So we've got the town as seen here in the art imagery. It's like a small settlement around there with wide streets, and then even though it's just like a small portion of the land, it kind of looks like a little piece of Brockton Bay was cut out of it. And then it's like a nice day out, which is like a weird juxtaposition for Taylor. And she even like tastes the salty air of the bay, and it's like, the peaceful ocean on one side and the completely destroyed city nearly being drowned on the other side. Um, uh, and then there's, huge lines of people at one section of the tent city, because the people are going there, and there's all these pre-portioned like tents and like ration packs and stuff, and they're prepared for kind of families of all sizes and stuff. So they've been putting in the work with the idea that they know the end of the world is coming. A lot of infrastructure laid out. And she sees all the people settling in, which we can see again on this sort of tent city imagery on the left side of the chapter art. Reading some of the signs as she passes, because each family kit includes like a sign and markers, and so it's like John and Jane Rowe, one diabetic, Hurl's family, 2 infants, Jason Ow, looking for Sharon Ow, my wife, with a picture of his wife drawn below. And Taylor's looking through for names that she recognizes, and she says she's taking a mental note of everything she saw. And then this was another part I pulled out. I guess one more bit of setup is that she says this is like an extension of everything she'd seen since she was in Los Angeles, how there was the Capes trying to cope in the immediate aftermath, and now that they've had more time, like people realizing and continuing to reel. But it's, in each expression there was something that echoed my own feelings. A part of me wanted to hide from that, but another part of me knew I couldn't. It wouldn't do any good, but I made a mental note of faces, of the pain, the loss, people who'd been removed from their homes and had all hopes for the future dashed. If I ever had the opportunity to get revenge, to get back at Scion for doing this, I wanted to remember these faces, find just a little more strength, make it hurt that much more. Yeah. And so, she, to try and make a tangible move to help these people, she decides to summon up all the mosquitoes in the area, and she uses her other bugs to kill all the mosquitoes, giving them more mosquitoes will flow in, because it's like an equilibrium, but giving them a moment's peace in this sad tent city. And then this is when she decides that it doesn't matter what she looks like anymore. She doesn't have to do the Weaver thing all the time. She covers herself in a pile of bugs, and she's like, oh, thank God, I was dying to cover myself in a pile of bugs. Vic says, Taylor demolishes the food chain, day 1. Look, I'm not saying it's not an ecological problem to a certain extent, but on a mostly untouched world compared to our own, if you take down like 3 square city blocks worth of mosquitoes, that's a drop in the bucket. Yeah. Greg says Taylor slips into something more comfortable, a big pile of bugs. Narwhal might have an all force field outfit, but Taylor has an all bugs outfit. Moments after this happens, when she's like, I should just pile myself in bugs. Then she's like, oh, Emma's family is right there. She sees a sign with Barnes written on it. Vic says, well, Rachel has already killed all the bison on this planet, too. You know, luckily for us, with no other people, I think her killing, some bison is not actually going to be that, again, drop in the bucket. It's when we've got, a whole, like, nation of people all taking down as many bison as they can. I think they're doing their best to maximize the gains from each bison, and it's possible to live in a semi-equilibrium with the land. It's not what Taylor's doing here with the mosquitoes, but hopefully they haven't done the Firebringer thing where they set all the mammoths on fire. I believe in them. Now, by the time we reach a few years down this timeline, maybe the bison not doing so well anymore. But at this moment, I think they're doing fine. So she sees the Barnes sign, and she sees Emma's family, her dad and her mom and her sister, but no Emma. And they're all crying. Crazy. I don't know. Where could Emma be? And they're like, she's thinking, they're gonna try and blame this on me? They're staring daggers like it's my fault? And she's like, fuck these people. And then she realizing that it's cringe to just fly away, she walks away for a bit, and then when they can't see her, and she thinks, okay, I'm good, then she starts flying away. And she flies to the cabins that we can see in the top section of the chapter art here. She's floating over like a huge sea of Tent City. Vic says, and then I shot Aster, and then I flew away and found Emma Barnes, and I shot her too. Yeah, it turns out Taylor, she was in shock, so she didn't tell us this part, but she lands the dragonfly, flies into Emma's house, shoots her, and then leaves. I know that she said she fired all her bullets in that scene with the Slaughterhouse 9, but she kept an extra one for some reason. She was like, I might need it, and she needed it to shoot Emma. But yeah, she gets to the collection of cabins. There's the dog pens. There's the little dog roundup where it's like a standard cowpoke horse thing, but it's an area for dogs to slowly melt from big dog to small dog, and then have a water trough. And then they say the largest cabin had 3 bison skulls placed over the cabin door. Vic said she had an extra one engraved with Emma's name. You know, the craziest part is that she already had the bullet engraved with Aster's name, too. Why did she have that on hand? Why was she engraving these bullets? Greg says, killing Emma? No, she was just squashing one final mosquito. What if instead Emma was alive, and instead of killing all the mosquitoes, she used all the mosquitoes on Emma at once? I don't know. Oh, Vic had a similar thought. Vic said, it would have been impossible to use on anyone else about the bullet, but then also, she took all the mosquitoes and shoved them down Emma's throat. Just as a nice thing to do. For the people. Yeah. And then, let's see here. So, and I mean, the cabins aren't described as being, like, hella far away. They're, like, 5 or 6 minutes walk from the furthest tent, they say. So pretty close, all things considered. And by flight pack, that's got to be seconds. And then boop, 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 boop. This is when Taylor thinks about her flight pack, and is like, oh no, where am I going to charge my flight pack? Vic says, she's like, why are they glaring at me like this is my fault, as Emma is actively dying of internal blood loss from mosquitoes in her tummy. Oh no, the mosquitoes are drawing blood from the inside? I didn't even think of that. Let's see here. So yeah, she thinks about how Defiant has the extra pack, but, what if he's too busy? My flight pack. And she's like, it's not even gonna help me against Scion, but it helps me feel good about myself to float around. And flying is like disconnection from other characters in this setting. So, you know, I need to be emotionally distant and have a flight pack, guys. It's not okay for me to be on the ground like everybody else. That's just not me. I know that used to be me, but I'm not her anymore. I don't walk around. That was only to show off in front of the Barneses, to show them I can walk around. So she kind of has a moment where she just takes in everything she sees, like the tent city and the open nature on one side, and she thinks about Brockton Bay fading away over time and becoming like the nature she's seeing, and it's daunting to her, the idea of like it perhaps not being very long until all remnants of them are wiped away. Vic says, way too much of Taylor's self-esteem comes from hovering in the air above everyone. Yeah, she gets a lot of self-esteem from that. I do agree. I feel like in Ward, we have a character, the main character has natural flight, and it's constantly like, look, I gotta be down on the ground. I can't be flying around all the time. I need to be with the people. And Taylor's just like, look, bro, I need to be flying at all times. Walking is for peasants. Taylor's on foot as she does approach the cabins, as, she does want to connect with these people. She sees Cassie. She doesn't know her name, but she sees Rachel's minion, Cassie, and she's like, I know her from 2 years ago. And then Cassie quiets the dogs and leads Taylor inside. Rachel's there, surrounded by dog pile, but also has Angelica there. And it's very sad. Angelica's still in poor health, has still been poisoned from night and fog. I mean, it's pretty obvious from Rachel's perspective why she would hate Theo's stupid family. Like, Fog is literally the one who poisoned Angelica forever, so she's in, like, constant pain. And Fog is directly part of the group of homies who hangs out with Theo's, mom or whatever. So, those guys suck. Those specific guys suck. And you know what? The fact that Justin's stuck on a time loop forever, who's to say? Maybe I'm fine with that. But back to business. Drawing our eyes away from saying how much the bad guys suck. Charlotte, Forrest, and Sierra are there. They're not moving to engage Taylor, but she's like, oh, it's kind of nice to see them, huh? And then she recognizes some of the kids and even one who isn't there. And she notices Aiden, and she's like, huh, looks like he has powers now. Like the power to control an animal with his mind. Huh, crazy. Well, I'm not going to think about that. It's so funny. Like, I had this, like, thought that this is, for anyone who's seen Crazy Ex-Girlfriend, this is like Rebecca Bunch in season 4, where she literally carried someone's baby and, like, was the, like, surrogate mother, and the baby is there, and someone's, like, wanting her to interact with it, and like the dad of the kid, and she's like, I don't really want to talk to it, and then he's like, you're the one who had this baby, and she's like, yeah, I just don't think of it that way, and she's just like so distantly removed, and this is like the kind of the same thing where she's like, oh, I had a kid, it's crazy, not gonna think about that, moving on, hustle it over here. um she sees Tattletale and sees the look on Tattletale's face and thinks that somebody must be dead, and she thinks that it isn't Gru, because Gru wasn't in the right spot to be. He would have been flying back to Brockton Bay, and like, you know, we don't know all the attacks that have happened. So Gru unaccounted for. She's like, nah, it can't be. And then she just strikes off the list. Well, it's not Imp or Perian or Foil. Definitely not them. Nope. And then, you know, she thinks about how Tattletale would have been focused on Brockton Bay. And then she thinks, my dad is for sure dead. Definitely dead. But she doesn't think that directly. She just starts having an anxiety attack. And, she, like, runs away out the door, and then she flies away. And then she doesn't fly over the city. She flies up over the water, and then further out into the ocean, and she surrounds herself in another bug pile. Because what are you going to do? Are you just going to not have a bug pile? Are you crazy? You got to have a pile of bugs. And, you know, she's that far out over the water, she could probably make, like, a krill pile, too. She's just too dejected to think about krill piles right now. And she thinks how, she sacrificed so much and spent all her time on this, and, it was for what? To reconnect with her dad? But was it even worth it now? Was anything even worth it? Building up their relationship now that he's gone? But also, I can't acknowledge that by, like, looking, if I find out he's dead for real, that's extra bad. But right now, he's Schrodinger's dad. He's alive and he's dead until I look. Man, Schrodinger had lots of problems. Whenever he wasn't looking at something, it was alive and dead. Let's see here. So yeah, here's the direct line. My dad was gone, and I couldn't bring myself to go back and get verification. I couldn't handle it if there was verification, or if there wasn't verification. So she's like in a state of limbo, and she's even at the point where she's like, but if I ask and they can't tell me, then I'll flip out even more. Then she thinks about her fuel gauge and how the fuel gauge is winding down, and then she thinks about how she's not going to have enough to get back. She built all this stuff to get to this pivotal moment. She had done what she needed to do to help finish off Hookwolf and to get everybody into place so that everyone could act at the right moment, and they had managed to kill Grey Boy, the Siberian, and Trapjack. and they had like nearly a complete victory, but now it was all led to this, and billions, millions, perhaps billions have died, and Scion is just like, he's just sort of like testing himself out right now. And she feels like she can't go back and do something that feels minor, and then thinks about herself as being arrogant, but also that, like, when so many are killed each moment and like their rescue efforts keep getting knocked down, it's hard to go do the rescue efforts. I feel like this chapter, like, even with like summarizing a lot of it in notes, like sometimes I don't get a lot of notes down, but even with that, I just kept ending up wanting to read parts of it. Like here, this part, the mask I'd erected to see things through to this point was cracking, and I couldn't bear to show anyone my face. Like, that's such a classic Worm Ward Parahumans line. Like, man, I live for moments like that. Yeah, this is where she's almost about to be at the critical point where she can't fly back from the bay anymore. The sky was darkening. No clouds, no city lights. A cloud passed over sunset, and the moon overhead. And it was startling just how dark things became. So it's not even like fully... It's not even fully dark outside in the traditional sense, but without any city lights or reflection, it's just like almost night already. And then a cauldron portal opens up in front of, or behind her, and she feels a little breeze from the air conditioning from the cauldron facility, and Tattletale talks to her. Your call. I'd like you to have my back, but I'd understand if... And then she goes through. She doesn't need more of a pitch than that. And she settles herself back on the ground, so, standing and not flying anymore, back at a human level with Tattletale. And they, once again, I just can't help myself but read more. Tattletale caught me as the door closed behind us. Then she wrapped her arms around me in a hug. Odd that she was shorter than me. When did that happen? I could remember her giving me a one-armed hug once, a long time ago. She'd been just a little taller than me, just the right height for a hug. Now we were like Foyle and Perian. I was taller, receiving comfort from someone shorter than me. I'd underestimated her. She didn't ask any questions or offer any sympathy. Yeah, and then they head into the cauldron meeting, and she asks if Taylor's ready. Taylor says she's ready, but they don't break the hug, and they have to say "fuck it" before they do. They have to really gird their emotions to break their hug here. They gotta dig deep, because final chapter thoughts. One of the best arc openers, I think. This is like up there with like arc 30, probably, in terms of arc openers. Let me think back through some point ones. The very first chapter of the book, it's a good enough opening chapter, but it's a little rocky since it's at the start. Arc 2, decent chapter, but the early chapters were so short. Arc 3's a very serviceable chapter. Same with 4. 5.1 is kind of interesting. 6.1, she's left home. Or no, she's getting more in the swing of villain things. 7.1, she's left home. 8.1, they're like illustrating that they have the Leviathan emergency. 9.1, we meet Weld and see the city destroyed. 10.1, the weird getting back together of the Undersiders chapter, with flashbacks and all. 11.1, setting up a territory. I mean, these are all, like, good opening arc chapters, but, like, scrolling through, I'm not really seeing a one that can really hold a candle to this, like, shock and awe opening. Yeah. 20.1. 21.1. 22.1? Okay, 22.1 is, like, the only chapter that, Yeah, okay. So the arcs with chapters that are this explosive, I would say, are 22, 24, 27, and 30. So, you know, it is in lofty company, for arc openers. And if someone told me this was their favorite arc opener, I would not question it for a second. But it's a little in the weeds, but what isn't on this show? I pulled out this little quote. I thought it was like the line of the chapter. Humans were so fragile in the end. Just a very short little thing, but it will get called back to later. So, as far as arc stuff, I kind of wrapped up my arc thoughts in the last little moment. I think it's just a great lead in. And it gives us just that little taste of they're going to be in another Cauldron meeting next chapter. So it swings us into the planning phase and out of the initial moment. It takes time to look at the aftermath of things, the scale of things really well, to really set the stage for what we're looking at, and then it turns to her planning. She doesn't she's not texting people this whole chapter. She's not like how Chevalier's on the phone the next moment, like immediately like talking things through. She's got her own like speed at which she can deal with these things. And you know what? The fact that her going on autopilot is her saving people from under rubble, that's not such a bad thing. It's a productive pursuit. So, you know, pretty good. Pretty good on Taylor. We can all be impressed with our third favorite character, Taylor. Characters, I wrote down, Clockblocker, Kidwin, Vista, Crucible, Toggle. They are all sort of at the LA site. Taylor sees them in the distance. They are part of the group she thinks of as all having these sort of very physical reactions, falling over practically, some of them. And they're like watching a screen that's mounted in a van that they're in, kind of thing, and so we don't get much from them. But obviously we see that at least Clockblocker and Vista are pulling people out from the rubble. Probably Crucible, Toggle, and Kidwin are just like slightly elsewhere because having too many capes in one spot is a bit wasteful as far as like digging people out, because I bet Kidwin's little suits are pretty strong for moving debris. You gotta get that debris out of the way. People might pronounce it right and call it debris. Mm. So, I'll go through these in a slightly different order than I wrote them down. Let me scoot these around on the dock. Yes. So, Chevalier and Revel are kind of having opposite reactions. Revel just needs to take a moment to kind of collapse onto the ground and put her head in her hands. She'll be ready to fight later, but not now. And Chevalier stabs his cannon blade into the ground and is just like instantly like talking and giving orders and directing people and stuff. Tecton and Golem are each staring at screens and reading things. Like Tecton is perfectly still, and Golem is like pacing endlessly. This is gonna be pretty stressful for him. I mean, the stuff that was going on before was bad enough. And then I've got Perian and Foil here. They are obviously, leaning in together and huddling for comfort from each other. And Taylor's like, key thought this chapter of like, man, wish that was me. I mean, I could see myself as either of them. Maybe like, even in some sort of situation where I was shorter than the other girl and then, I don't know, grew taller than her. I don't know. I've never been in a situation like that before. We just get the like minor interaction of Perian denying Taylor, and I think it's good. You know, they'll be back in the thick of things later, but they need to. For a lot of these people, I think it's more important that they compose themselves now, because in these first few moments, there's like almost nothing they can do anyway. They can get a move on to places, but they can't. Like, they can't really help if they are like unable to emotionally cope, and so they need to pull it together first. Moving on from Perian and Foil. I know this seems like we spent but a moment on them. The Barnes family. We see. Well, I guess we could briefly address the sea of civilians, both the ones that are in the greater bulk of America, as well as the ones in Brockton Bay, and then the refugees who have already crossed over from Earthbet to Earthgimel. They are all, even more powerless than Taylor to act. She thinks to herself, while they're flying over the country, that she would be down there with them. These were the people who were at least prepared enough to have an escape plan to try and get through a portal. And that's how she'd be if she didn't have powers. And then the Barneses, Emma. They don't ever say Emma definitely dead, but I think that we can easily conclude Emma definitely dead. And with some out of story knowledge, I think there's an implication that Emma might have maybe taken her own life, let's say after the Arc 20 events or something, or like maybe she had been, I've also heard it theorized that she had been like too scared to leave her house, and by being like shut up in her room and unable to leave, then she had died. So I've heard all these theories, but it could just as easily be that she was randomly killed by the event, just as countless other people were, and that they simply blame her for perhaps Emma's renewed issues after realizing that Taylor was not, in fact, the weakling she thought she was. I really feel like that moment in the cafeteria was a big blow to Emma's psyche, and then having that bad interaction with Sophia, as well. So Emma probably was not having a good time for the last couple years. And they all blame Taylor because, when it turns out that a bullying victim isn't as much of a victim as you thought, maybe that's rude to the bully, and that hurts their feelings. Did you ever think of that? So the Barnes family hits us with a classic. Didn't even think of that, did you? And they're right. I had not even considered their side of the story. Moving on from their sorry state of affairs at their refugee tent, Charlotte, Forrest, and Sierra are seen, as well as the kids from a distance. Mason, Kathy, and Ephraim are there. I know it's probably Ephraim, but it really looks like Ephraim. It's like the cousin to those A-frame houses, the E-frame house. And then there's like one that's missing that she notices, like Jessie is not there, I think. But she vaguely thinks of these people, and we can like infer how they might be feeling. I mean, if they've been, we can even like take a guess at if they've been living out here. Maybe they came through with the kids because they knew things would be extra dicey because of information from Tattletale. And of course, Tattletale realized the end of the world was coming briefly before it did, so she could have sent them all through right then. But then, yeah, mostly Taylor just sees them. She's like, I'm glad they're not coming over and talking to me right now. That would stress me out. And moves along. And we see Aiden, and I took out the quote here. Again, something had happened there, but it wasn't a focus. Not right now. I don't know. There's just something interesting about Taylor being like, yeah, that guy's my kid. I gotta get the hell out of here. Oh boy. Oh, Taylor. And then we've got Rachel, Cassie, and Angelica, and Dog Swarm. We have this sort of, at first Rachel's devastated and is in shock with getting the dog, but she really seems to pull it together once she gets home. She goes through a whole character arc this chapter. It's as much as a character in a short story might change. She really rethinks life. I'm gonna have Jimmy Stewart play her in a movie. I wrote down Brian and Danny, because Taylor's all like, don't think about it too hard. It's more explicit with Danny where she's like, he's dead, but I can't look into it. But he's definitely dead. And then with Brian, it's just sort of like, put him out of your mind. He was in the middle of the country. There's no way anything bad happened. So she does just skip right past them. And she does the same thing to Aisha. I'm gonna put Aisha next to Brian right on this list. They tie for Taylor just being like, no, they're alive. I don't need to see him to believe it. But for Danny, definitely dead. Don't need to see him to believe it. For Lisa, she's very apologetic to Taylor, and she knows that Taylor's going to take all this harder, because as much as Lisa theoretically wants to help the world, she's a lot more emotionally removed from other people who aren't Taylor. So she's able to take this a lot more in stride. And I, of course, pulled this quote. Now we were like Foyle and Perian. I was taller, receiving comfort from someone shorter than me. I'd underestimated her. She didn't ask any questions or offer any sympathy. Gay! Oh my god, it's like I'm reading Sky Daddy all over again. Oh, whenever I read a good book, everything seems like that book. And this was just like that scene in the club. The bartender was too attractive. I put that out of my mind. Yeah, I mean, Lisa's the best here. We can see further evidence as to why Lisa's the second best character in the story. And we can move right along to the third best character, Taylor. I like this little moment. She says, "My second sense extended through the area." And I thought, your second sense? It's just funny that nearly tops the lists. Because normally someone would say like sixth sense, although, you know, obviously humans have more senses than the five they call the five senses. But she doesn't have a sixth sense. She's got a second sense. Although I have also heard the term second sense be used for people sensing ghosts with their mind. So, you know, for her, instead of ghosts, it's bugs. And then, of course, I pulled the... I intentionally skipped reading this line earlier. I just described it, but I wrapped the bugs around me. Fuck PR. The faint weight of the insects was reassuring, like a blanket, a barrier against the world, like Tecton's armor, or Rachel's intimidating nature. But yeah, that's another, like, classic moment for me. Fuck PR. Yeah, you know, in this character section, I will include honorable mention for Glenn. He is, in a distant sense, being told to fuck off by Taylor. And then, you know, there's a lot of, like, sort of implied presences, I think, of all the different heroes and stuff who are slightly off screen, who we have to imagine, like, all the Brockton Bay Standard Protectorate are going around doing hero work too, like trying to do the same types of things we saw Taylor and Rachel doing. So, you know, shouts out to them. And, you know, as sort of a overall thing, you know, we talked about it the whole chapter, but just each and every character can have an addendum, and they're all in shock. As for powers, knowledge, and world building, we get another reminder of, like, the pre-destruction of LA by Bohu. We see the building partially collapsing as Azazel lands on it, and also, like, for some reason, I really like this moment. It like, you know, it feels like Taylor is talking about her emotions, while she's talking about the cityscape. She says, in her mind, "I looked into the pit, as deep as a 6 or 7 story building was tall." And, you know, the ground is crumbling from out beneath them, like, metaphor much? Then I said, like, the mass evacuation. The majority of this chapter is about, like, witnessing or assisting with the mass evacuation of people from America Earthbet to America Earthgimmel. There was an interesting moment with the Scar that reminds us that all over the world there are kind of places that have been affected by powers that most of them are contained, and This is but one example of them being sort of unleashed. A containment foam was being deployed to slow the spread of a pale patch of earth, and there was one spot of fire that didn't seem to be going out. So, just random effects and things are being released, possibly all over the world. And then we've got the Brockton Bay force field being repurposed was cool. With powers as metaphors for, like, the characters who create them, and assuming that shield is made by Armsmaster, then it's as though he went from just someone who's focused on only the PRT and their, like, specific base to someone who's actually focused on protecting the city. And it does, like, a really effective job of saving all these people and stopping the survivors of the impacts and, like, the first and second wave of Scion attack from getting washed away. So it's like the only reason there are even any survivors is the defensives they've put in place, and they're, like, repurposed, better thought out use of their resources. And then, and I guess it's also like, if they hadn't had the crisis of Leviathan, the shield would still only block the base, so they wouldn't be able to save these people, kind of thing. It doesn't make up for the losses from the Leviathan attack, but it shows how they've learned. So then there's the search and rescue portion of the chapter. We've kind of talked about that a lot. It's good to see that, because we rarely get to see this type of hero work, but you've got to imagine it's one of the things that that the superheroes are best at. Like, some heroes would be ridiculously good at, like, firefighting and such. Like, what if you just had Gregor the Snail as a full-time firefighter? Like, wouldn't that be pretty fucking legit? Like, he'd be really good at it, and as far as the kind of getting people out of buildings, he could, like, glue together falling apart buildings with his ooze, and then it would give them more time to evacuate before it collapsed. All sorts of things. I mean, these are just off the top of my head. But this section kind of shows, if they weren't fighting all the time, what they could be doing, and, like, the level of service that they could be granting to the people if there were no major threats. It's, like, bittersweet to see them this effective at saving people. And, like, there's kind of two ways about it as well, because they're saving people, but then in the face of how many are being killed, this is very minor, in a way. And although, as the saying goes, to save one life is to save the whole world. And then, the Brockton Bay portal is really interesting. I think the fact that they have the train station that's described as being like an Escher painting or whatever, and it, like, goes up and the tracks shoot out at all different levels. Just very cool. Like, it's cool as hell. Sometimes you just want a sci-fi thing that's, like, fucking awesome. I really like the contrast between one side of the portal and the other, because, like, on one side of the portal things are destroyed in all directions, and on the other it's like the ground is untouched. We talked about the settlement in the tent city. I don't have that much more to say about it, but, like, these tent cities are a new fixture of the setting. Like, from this point on, there will never not be refugees in tent cities. So, that's a thing. I wrote, "Ma flight pack battery," because Taylor is pretty, it's one of those things where each little thing is like, oh my god, this shit too. She is honestly a little devastated when she realizes she might run out of flying battery. And then I think the base they're using for the Undersiders is really cool, the cabins. I guess I should have wrote a last little entry. Cauldron headquarters. The last thing that happens in the chapter is that Taylor gets picked up, and now everyone who needs to be scooped for the Cauldron meeting has been scooped for the Cauldron meeting. And so they're all ready to head inside. With all that, I don't think I have anything more to say until the audience participation. The question was, what's another long-term villain reveal in the last 80 to 90% of the story? Something like the Scion reveal, where it's semi-hidden, semi-in plain sight. And Vic had said, in We Have Always Lived in the Castle, the reveal of who killed Mary Cat and Constance's family isn't till the last portion of the story. A lot of thriller-type books and movies will have a villain twist at the end. One that I hated and came out of absolute nowhere was the book The Maidens. This villain died prior to the book starting, and yet in the last 20 pages, you get the reveal with no prior foreshadowing. Well, def not a good backfill on that one. Yeah. That sounds bad. I remember that's one of the ones you had sort of a low rating on when you reviewed it. On your channel, Plebeian Reads, for all those interested in book review, Plebeian Reads YouTube channel. That's where you can find Vic. Greg says, yeah, most examples I have for this are either twist villains or the reveal of a mystery. Of course, I am contractually obligated to mention prequel Palpatine. Yeah, that's part of why I thought this would be fine, because I thought there were a good number of examples where like Palpatine, which is one of the ones I was kind of thinking of too, it's like theoretically a twist that he's evil, but it's also not a twist because the movies do intentionally make it clear to the audience from the beginning. They're like, see this Palpatine guy? He's behind it all. He's Sidious. And they're like, huh. Wow, we just can't catch the Sith Lord. And you know what? Anakin almost counts too. The story is also like all about him turning evil, but you could say the same shit about parahumans, where it's like, well, up to the point when Scion turns on the world, then that's still like a core background component of the world. And like Anakin is supposed to be this good guy. And I've talked about the feeling before. It's like one of the only movies where when I'm actually watching the movie, like some background part of my brain can be like, but what if he doesn't turn evil? Yeah. As far as other twist villains, yeah, a lot of them are too much. They're too baked into the mystery of the story. I want to say one of my favorite movies and say, like, there's a twist villain in this, but it's like, at the same time, if anyone ever watches that movie, I don't want them to know already. But it is, as Vic says, it is a thriller type movie, and it has a thriller type. Oh my god, I can't believe they were the. You know what I can say is another one that I don't care about spoiling, because this was a movie that I mostly thought was bad and was only kind of okay because of the reveal. At the end of Shrooms, you're like, oh, the girl we've been following the whole time, there haven't been any real ghosts. She's been hallucinating the ghosts, and her actions to try and counteract the ghosts have also directly led to her killing the people that have died. And although she perceived it as both her and the person she was with being harrowed by a ghost, it was actually just her harrowing other people. Pretty good villain reveal. Only good part of the movie as far as I'm concerned. Rest of the film, bad. And I don't hate horror movies, so, you know, I'm medium on them. I like about 60% of the ones I watch. So, I guess that's all that we've got to say. Well, you know, I'm gonna, as I've been doing for posterity, if anyone goes back and reads these, my example, the movie Shrooms. Secret bad guy reveal. Boom. And then 27.2. I was having kind of a hard time forming the question. I was thinking it's kind of like, which character do you think has the most practical middle ground, most practical reaction on the spectrum of people dealing with the losses of both people they know and the mass civilian deaths? Question mark. Boom. That'll be the question. I formed the sentence on the fly, but I had been thinking about it, you know, the whole time leading up. I was like, I know the general topic I want. Numberman talks a lot in the next chapter about, like, when things should happen, what would be best. You know, those sorts of things. So I'm going to start the speed draw again slightly early. Let me see how much lead in it needs. About here. In the lead up to me starting up the outro song, I've noticed that if I let the speed draw not quite finish, the base thumbnail for the stream ends up being the half-finished picture, and I'm like, bleh. But, we're on the outro now, and, the music used in this episode was Extinction by ScarlettXOX. You can find, Scarlett at twitch.tv/Scarlett_Rogue. The other links, as well as the link to that song, are found in the stream description, but then all the rest of the links are in the channel description. Cheers for the stream, Greg. Cheers. The Discord link is there. The link to Wildbow's Patreon at patreon.com/Wildbow. The full text of the work available for free online at parahumans.wordpress.com. And there's also a fan-made audiobook of the entire work at audioworm.rain-online.org. And I'm going to let the rest of the song play out naturally, and I will talk to you all next stream.